I have coached nearly 300 students to a CDL, and every single one of them passed their pre-trip on the very first try. You heard that right, 100% success rate. If it worked for them, it can work for you. Stay tuned, figure out how to pass that pre-trip. Now, first things first, quick refresher on our pre-trip inspection. We have 6 different sections, as we can see on that pre-trip. The 3 in blue are gonna be those axles: engine compartment, driver's side door and fuel area, and a trailer. Those all have an axle. The 3 in green are gonna be your mandatories: a coupling section where the vehicles combine, a lights inspection, and then that in-cab. And in that in-cab, we have the air brake test. Now, that air brake test is comprised of 3 different tests. As we can see here, we have our applied pressure test, followed by our warning light and buzzer test, and then our tractor and trailer pop-out protection valve test. Now, let's first talk about why do we do these tests? What's the point of these tests to begin with? So each test is trying to accomplish a different objective. First, that applied pressure test, this is where we press down on our service brake, hold it for 60 seconds, and monitor to make sure that we don't lose more than 4 PSI, i.e. 5 or greater, in 60 seconds while we're listening for leaks. The reason we do an applied pressure test is we are trying to decide, is there a pinhole leak in the lines or the tank somewhere that's going to be a problem for us? And if it is, it's much better to solve that problem at a shipper, at a receiver, at a truck stop, at the yard, wherever you happen to be at when you administer that test in the beginning of the day or the end of the day, because it's a small problem at that point, and we love as drivers to keep small problems small. So if we have that problem there, we can solve it there. It's much better than trying to solve it on a secondary or a tertiary highway out in Alabama or Mississippi where there's no shoulder and you're in hill country. So we want to keep small problems small. That's why we do that applied pressure test. Now, that second test is the warning light and buzzer test. And what we're doing here is continuing to pump down on our brake until our warning light and our buzzer come on at or before, at or above 60 PSI. And we need it to happen at that threshold because we need the truck to say, hey driver, we are losing pressure. We need to find a safe place to pull off and park the vehicle. Now, that third test here we can see is going to be the protection valve pop-out test. And what we're doing here is continuing to pump down our brake until our tractor and trailer valves pop out, which should occur between 20 and 40 PSI. We need to make sure that system is working so that way if we do lose a sufficient amount of air, the vehicle will safely lock our brakes so we can get that problem solved before we head back out on the road. So there we have a breakdown of the 3 separate tests themselves. Now let's head out into the field and see a correct air brake test administered with a truck and trailer. The first thing we're going to need to do before we can start our air brake test, a couple things. First, we're going to push in both of our valves, and we're going to make sure to rev up the engine a little here at 10 RPMs so that our air pressure is comfortably sufficient to start this test. And I like to have it be well over 105 so we have enough air in the tanks for that applied pressure test. There we got it. And now we need to go ahead and do our left hand assignment: engine off, electric back on. So now it is time to start my air brake test. My air brake test is comprised of 3 sections. My first section is the applied pressure test. I'm going to fully depress my service brake, wait for my gauges to stabilize, and when they do, I'm going to make sure I do not lose more than 4 psi in 60 seconds while listening for leaks. At this point, I press all the way down on that pedal, get comfortably locked into position, watch my gauge stabilize, and I tell that examiner, my gauges have now stabilized, will you please start my time for 60 seconds? And he starts the clock. At some point, 60 seconds goes up. He or she says that's time. We take our foot off the brake and we say, I did not lose more than 4 psi in 60 seconds and I did not hear any leaks. It is now time to start the second test, the warning light and buzzer test. I'm going to continue to pump down my brakes until my warning light and buzzer come on at or before 60 psi. And now I'm pumping my brake until the warning light and buzzer come on. My warning light and buzzer have come on at or before 60 psi. Now it is time for my third test, the tractor and trailer protection valve pop-out test. I'm going to continue to pump down my brake until both my tractor and trailer valves pop out, which should occur between 20 and 40 psi. And now I continue to pump, and I watch my red and yellow valves, waiting for them to deploy. Once they do, the beeping will stop, and I will tell the examiner, my tractor and trailer valves popped out between 20 and 40 psi. That concludes my air brake test. I will now start up my truck, remove my chalk, and begin my tug test. And that's it, guys. Follow along on that script, execute it just like it is there and just like you saw it, and you're gonna do great. Okay, there we have a successfully executed air brake test with a truck and trailer. So let's summarize. First, we did our applied pressure test. We firmly pressed that brake for 60 seconds to make sure we did not lose more than 4 psi and we were listening for leaks. That second test, we did the warning light and buzzer test. We pumped down to make sure that the warning light and buzzer were going to go off at or before 60 psi, because at 20 to 40 psi, that third test, the tractor and trailer valves pop out, and we need to make sure we have sufficient warning before those do pop out, because those brakes are going to set when they do pop out, and that can be kind of an uncomfortable moment, either a ka-chung ka-chung or a but we don't want to experience that without that warning light and buzzer going off. So those were our 3 tests executed correctly. Applied pressure, warning light and buzzer, tractor and trailer protection valve pop-out test. Now, a little bit about how to approach this test. I give students a very specific script, and I tell them to approach this like they just got the lead role in the movie, student who gets their CDL, and this is their big monologue. They got to nail their lines. I use something called the bookend technique. You say what you're going to do, you then do it, and then you explain what you just did, so it's very clear to that examiner that you fully understand the test. Now, if you would like a copy of the script that I use, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I would love to get that over to you. As of right now, we have a 100% success rate. I have never had a student fail this test using this system. So you know it can work. If it worked for them, it can work for you. Reach out. Let's pass your test. I can help. Other than that, same stuff as usual, guys. Please comment below, like, and share to anybody who's interested. Always stay in touch from the road. Drive safe, drive smart. Until next time. Uncomfortable moment, either a ka-chung ka-chung or a but ka-chung ka-chung or a ka-chung ka-chung or we don't want to experience that without that air brake test. Wildcat. I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna go.